Thank you, Professor Lee, and good morning to everyone here. I'm going to talk very briefly, actually, about the vulnerability and disaster in high-altitude cities. And this is a background to the presentation. We all know that urban centers are close to home to large population, and there's rapid growth of population. Over 40% of Asia population are living in the urban areas, and is quickly increasing. And of course, the projection indicate that 1 out of every 2 Asians will live in the cities by 2025. So that's a huge number. And the urban centers are not just home to large populations, but they are also the engines of economic growth. And it's a key driver for a lot of countries. And you can see the stat down there, the various part of Asia where we benefit from the economy of urban centers. And along with that benefit comes with challenges. There are high levels of poverty. If you look at urban centers, a lot of the times, especially in the developing countries, we tend to focus on the development in the rural areas. We think that farmers are poor, and therefore we have to actually help them deal with poverty. But you look at urban centers, and that's where actually severe poverty is. We have a lot of people who live in urban centers who are very poor, but they're just under your nose. You don't see them. We always look far into the rural areas, and these people get neglected. And as a result, we have all this urban poverty where a lot of people have a problem. And if you look at that, 60% of the poor live on less than $2 a day. And almost 25% of the people in urban areas live below the poverty line. And of course, this figure is quickly increasing. And they are becoming very vulnerable to a lot of things, including natural disasters. In recent years, natural disasters have been exacerbated by climate change. And that's why this topic here. Climate change, as you know, impacts almost every one of us every day. But if you look at the cities, a lot of the climate change and disaster studies are sort of focused on major mega cities. And most of these cities are along the coastal lines or along the river valleys. But then I come from a very high altitude city myself. I'm from Bhutan, and the capital of Bhutan is Thimphu, which is about 7,000 feet above sea level. And we have our own problems. These cities are kind of not really well studied. So if you look at climate change impacts and you look at vulnerabilities, the high altitude cities, they are landlocked, which means you have very low capacity to actually respond to disasters or bounce back from damages, and they're the least studied. Because a lot of the studies are focused on those mega cities by the oceans where there are a lot of economic activity in place. So this is something that actually motivated me to look at the cities which are high up in the mountains, landlocked and inaccessible. And a lot of these cities, of course, if you look at Asia high mountains, we're locked up. Asia high mountains is a very important landscape in Asia. These are the water towers. If you look at this, it's called the third pole. We have the North Pole and the South Pole, and of course, the whole area over there, the mountain system is like the third pole. That's where water reserves are locked up, and that's what we need. We need water. Water is becoming one of the most scarce commodity on earth, and it's important that we look at these mountain systems because they support over 1.2 billion people downstream. And there are a lot of cities on this mountain system that sort of caters to economic growth, it caters to a lot of population who live in poverty, and they are very vulnerable to climate change impacts. And of course, from an environmental point of view, a lot of these mountains are also biodiversity hotspots. So it's really like, you know, the intersection of hotspot and biodiversity, economic boom, as well as population growth. And these cities deserve the attention, you know, that needs to be given so that we continue to provide safe haven for all of these sectors. So we designed to actually look at these issues in some of the high altitude cities. You look at Thimphu, which is in Bhutan, and then Kathmandu, which is in Nepal, and Leh in India, northern part of India, and then Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar. And we also plan to look at other things like Almaty, Kabul, and other places. This is a very preliminary kind of presentation. I'm still looking at these places and collecting data. And the approach is we look at both secondary data as well as primary data. The primary data is from a focus group, as well as interviews and talking with both residents in these communities in the city, as well as with city authorities. And we do both socioeconomic analysis as well as satellite imageries and other things using GIS. And some of the key information that we're looking to collect, or are collecting in a way, socioeconomic climate, problems facing the cities, effects of climate change in terms of magnitude and frequency, and loss from disasters, and some of the things that, so this is sort of very preliminary. We can look at, variability in terms of water, rising temperature, resulting in all of these, in all these high altitude cities. This increase in glacial runoff because of glacial outbursts. This is increasingly becoming a big problem, especially in the Himalayas, where the glaciers are receding and we have glacial floods. There's, of course, temperature fluctuation and impact on agriculture and food security on ecosystems, as Professor John also mentioned in his presentation, and of course on all of us, on our health, on our well-being, on our spirituality. A lot of people in these mountains not just look up to the resources in the mountain as a source of livelihood, but also as a spirituality. They respect these resources. So a loss of glacier may in a way be like a loss of their culture. So these are some of the things. And preliminary kind of observations that we've been looking at is there's high rural urban migration, there's increasing expansion of the existing squatter settlements in the cities. And if you actually watched the slum or that movie from India is, you would know the informal settlements. It's always growing. It's like a cancer. Right? The cities become the attraction. People go there, they live with their relatives, they don't get along, they start living in these informal settlements, and they continue to grow. There's, of course, then the waste management problem. There's a lack of proper and sufficient infrastructure to deal with the growth, and that leads to all kinds of problems, including health, the ecosystem service degradation, and of course decreasing capacity to cope with disasters, whether you talk from a family perspective or from the city authority perspective, because the cities were not planned to deal with such level of growth, and of course they don't have the economic as well as the capacity to deal with this problem. There is rainfall changing, as I mentioned, temperature, flood, increasing storms, there are landslides, and forest fires and water scarcity and drought. And these all seem to impact the lower income people the most. And they have basically very little capacity to respond, to adapt to climate change disaster. And of course, there are off-site causes globally, global warming. And you look at these mountains where you have glaciers and they're receding and actually leading to floods downstream. And people living along the valleys are mostly affected. And if you look at most of these high altitude cities, they're by the river valleys. And they're really at big risk. Countries like Bhutan, we only have one capital city. And if there's a glacial lake outburst and the city is like flooded, that's it. It'll take years to actually come back to normality. And one of the ideas is then to look at how best can we deal with these problems from a, an ecosystem integrated kind of approach. And this is what we're trying to look at. We look at the baseline problems in the cities. What are the, burning issues? What is the biggest problem there? Here, the example that I've given is inadequate infrastructure. For example, transport. And some of the, we look at some of the ongoing kind of efforts and the effect of climate change and what's the outcome. And then you look at what are we trying to target as an adaptation? What are we trying to do here? And what are the interventions that one can actually, sort of recommend to the authorities, to the governments in these areas, so that we enhance ecosystem services, at the same time mitigate some of these issues, like transportation, flooding, forest fire, landslides. And so this is the perspective that we're approaching this study from. And the study we hope to be complete by next year, February, and we'll have more data. It's being analyzed. I'm not presenting the outcome of the analysis here. This is very preliminary, and we are still getting more and more data every day. So to summarize, I just want to say that in terms of interventions, you can look at settlement of impoverished slum dwellers, urban agriculture, agroforestry, riverbank protection, using ecosystem approaches, and afforestation, ecosystem management in the watershed, that's higher up in the mountains, and awareness and training. And that's about it. I don't want to take time away from our young professionals, so that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.